Welcome to Mind Shift Power Podcast, a show for teenagers and the adults who work with them, where we have raw and honest conversations. I'm your host, Fatima Bey, the Mind Shifter. And welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Delicia Niami, and she is in California. She's an author and an abuse survivor, and she has a very powerful perspective, some powerful words for you today. How are you doing today, Delicia?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on. And as you know, I like to dive right into it. And I'm going to start off with reading a quote from you that I thought is just so powerful. And you said it to me during our conversation, and I actually made it a post on social media. We talk a lot in this country about drugs, crime, suicide, and mental health. How much of that do you think would be non-existent if we empowered kids from a younger age to know that they are not at fault and do not have to harbor the guilt and shame internally? And
Exactly.
that dives right into this conversation because you could not be more right with that. I think that quote just basically sums up a lot of what we're going to talk about in this conversation. So, Delicia, why don't you briefly tell the audience, why are you so passionate about family secrets?
Well, I am passionate about it because I lived through it and I understand how it affected me now after doing so much work and so much reading and learning so much about myself and really looking at myself through an open lens with an open mind and doing the therapy and doing the hard work. I've realized that, not only have I gone through hell in my life and back, which I never realized before, but I wanted to share my message because I made it through. And not only did I make it through, but I made it through and I'm happy and I am thriving as a person. So as a human being, I'm a well-adjusted individual and I have friends and I'm happy and, there's no issue with that, there is issue with what happened with me, but I've learned how to deal with it as a human being. And I've learned how to deal with my traumas as they arise. And I've learned that through various ways. So I think it's important to talk about it, to share it with people. And the most important thing about that quote and why I said it was because I feel like I've internalized a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And I have a lot of demons inside that came from things that happened to me externally, from an external basis. So I feel like getting through that, and being able to help others. And the way that we do that and the way that we start is by talking about it. And pedophilia is so taboo in this country. Nobody ever talks about it. And I want to be a crusader for that. And I want to start talking about it and telling kids that they have the power internally to not harbor that shame and guilt and know that it wasn't your fault. I mean, the first time I was ever molested, he didn't even have to touch me. So it was just, he made me watch him jack off. And it was just, I was frozen. I couldn't move. I wasn't enjoying it, but I couldn't move, and it traumatized me to no end. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And I didn't realize I was being groomed and I didn't realize all this stuff. And had somebody told me, had somebody talked to me about that, had I known, that these things shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't be befriending somebody who, is almost a 40-year-old man. That's not, a little girl walking down an alley by herself shouldn't be talking to strangers that are 40 years old, And so I think at that time it was the mid to late 70s and it was a different era back then, and I think, and I hope people talk to their kids more now. But yeah, it was a different era back then. And I just think talking about it is so important.
So to clarify, you were abused several times, not just once. You had ongoing abuse. Is that a good way to say it?
I did, yeah.
Okay. And so that became a family secret for you.
I don't know if it was a family secret as much as it was an internal secret that I kept from my family.
Okay.
So because of the shame,
you're right. That's a
because
better
of
way
the
to say it.
internal shame and the internal guilt and feeling like it was my fault and feeling like maybe I did something wrong and feeling scared that maybe my mom wouldn't believe me. Feeling scared that maybe, because, eventually they ended up, I don't want to give away too much of my book or be too brash, but like there's a part in Kissing Asphalt where she ends up becoming friends with my molester and I see them having sex and it's very traumatizing.
Wow. That's already traumatizing for me and didn't even happen to me.
Yeah. Very traumatizing. So, the trigger warnings in my book are real.
Yeah.
So
for someone right now who has secrets in a family their secret, maybe because it's not just you holding back a secret from their family, because maybe their family doesn't know. Sometimes there's a secret within the family and some do know. What are the signs that there's something going on, that someone's holding a detrimental secret, something that's harmful to themselves or that's traumatizing, maybe I should say? What are some signs to look for?
It's really hard. It's really hard to know, and it's really hard to know when it's right in front of your face. And I'll tell you an example that I'm not going to name names, but I will say that's somebody very close to me in my life that I have to. So my nephew, who, lived with my brother. When I was 25, my brother tried to molest me, and he got me drunk, and I got passed out, and I trusted him. It's another thing, like we trust people that we can't always necessarily trust, but I trusted him. And this was a brother I just met when I was 15, so it wasn't like I know him and grew up with him my whole life. But he got me drunk and almost molested me with my nephew in the room. And I didn't talk to him for like 5 years. And my whole relationship with my nephew was picking him up from his mother's house and spending time with my nephew that way. And I remember one time, this is going to make me cry, but when my nephew was 5, I went over and dropped him off for the weekend. And when my brother came to pick him up, he was screaming and crying, no, 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 I don't want to go. 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 And he was like grabbing onto me. And I just thought maybe he just wanted to spend more time with me because we loved each other so much. And I didn't think anything of it. And then after my brother died, when my nephew was 13, and his mother shared with him the fact that my brother got me drunk and tried to rape me, which was, I thought, so ironic to share with your kid at 13 years old. But I talked to him about that, and he told me, don't worry, Auntie, I understand. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, he did it to me too. And I said, are you kidding? And he said, no, when I was little, like 3 and 4, I remember. And I'm like, oh my God. So that was happening back then. And I didn't notice. And even though I knew that my brother was a pedophile, I thought he only liked little girls, and it was just crazy that and my nephew says, it's okay, Auntie. And I'm like, no, I should have known. With everything that I knew, I should have known, and I still kick myself for not doing something or saying something. But I honestly, it's so hard, it's so hard. So that's a big family secret.
Yeah, no, well, it was. So what happened to you, it sounds like the only person that knew was his mother? Or she knew because you told her?
I don't know who else my brother might have told. Who
Okay.
knows? But his mom knew because I wasn't talking to him for 5 years,
Yeah.
because of it. We didn't talk again until like after my mom was killed. Uh, we ended up talking, and because I had to call him to tell him that my mom died, and yeah. So then he ended up changing, and it's all in the books. But yeah,
So what I'm also hearing you saying is, my original question was, what are the signs? One of the biggest signs is when the child is absolutely screaming in terror to go with their abuser. And that is a common thing. And it doesn't, I want to say this to keep the conversation balanced for those who like to take everything to extremes. It doesn't mean every time a child is throwing a temper tantrum that someone's abusing them.
no.
But
This was a unique situation. It was
right,
very clear he did not want to go with
when
his
it's that
father
strong,
specifically.
right? It not just, no, I don't want to leave auntie, or I don't want to leave grandma because she makes best cookies. Not that. That's a different kind of screaming, yelling than terror and fear. Please, 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 no, no, no. And there is a difference, but you really kind of have to know the child to know the difference. And so, well, not always, but most, I think more so. So for those of you listening, I want you to hear that when you see that over and over again. When you see that, that is something, but also when there is a change. And I've heard this from other abuse survivors. When there is a change, and I'm talking to the audience right now, there's all of a sudden a change in this person's, they were all happy-go-lucky before, and now they just seem kind of depressed when they get around a certain person, even if they're not screaming and yelling. Their behavior changes when they get around a certain person or go to a certain home. There's something about that person or home that is traumatizing or really bad for them. And often it's abuse of some sort. May not be sexual, could be something else, but that is something that you want to take a look at. Because some of these secrets, man. All right. I have a question for you, Delicia.
Bring it.
We teach our kids to not allow certain things when they are young instead of waiting until they're victims.
I think absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at my nephew was 3, 4 when it started happening, and maybe it's hard because their little minds aren't really developed yet. So how do you make them understand something like that? Maybe they don't. Maybe there's a way. I don't know, man. It would be really cool to write like a book for kids that somehow makes them aware without damaging their, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very delicate balance.
It is, but I'm going to chime in right here and state my very strong opinion on this topic. Talk to your kids. I don't care how old they are. Talk to them about molestation and rape. Don't wait until it happens to them. A lot of times, and I've talked to many victims, a lot of times these conversations didn't happen until after the fact. Right. And that's the problem. Yep. The problem is when you don't address the issue will address your kids before it's too late. And then it's too late.
Exactly. And maybe they don't understand when they're right. 2. When you're talking to them at 2 years old, it could be happening to them. You don't know it.
You don't have to necessarily say all the big words. You just simply say, nobody touches you here. Don't let any adult show you their private parts. It could be as simple as that. Because I promise you, if you don't have those conversations with the children, the molesters are waiting for you to not have the conversation so they could be the one to introduce them to something and make them think it's normal.
Or don't let any adult touch you in any manner that makes you feel uncomfortable in any way.
You need to have those conversations. You can put your own words to it because all of us don't talk the same. And that's fine. Put your own wording to that. But
it's super important.
To parents, put your own wording to that. But parents or guardians, because not all kids are living with their parents. So if you're a guardian, I don't care who you trust, make sure that child is prepared. I will personally talk about my own experience with that. I was never molested, but I do believe a large part of why I was never molested because my mother ingrained in us, don't you let nobody touch you here. Before I was even 8 years old, I already knew that those were off limits. And if anybody ever did even attempted to do anything, I already knew how to react. And I do think that it would have happened to me because I could think of a couple instances if my mother hadn't already prepared my mind for it. She didn't go into all graphic details because she didn't need to. I was little. But all
Right.
of you that think your kids are too little for stuff, our society doesn't think they're too little for it. At 2 years old, they're watching sex on your phone, even though you think they're not. It's shoved in their face. Don't wait until the abusers catch them. Get your kids prepared because they're coming for them, whether you like it or not. And I know that's a hard thing to hear, but I want to tell you the truth because I want you to be prepared. And I'm very passionate on this topic because I have seen way too many victims that were this conversation, if it had happened, they would have reacted different. It will not stop everything. It will not stop everyone. But what I am saying is that it can make a difference. And the child will at least know that something wrong was done to them instead of taking that guilt on for themselves and thinking that they did something wrong or they're the slut or they're the whatever garbage that they're told. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Now,
Hey, I'm on it with you.
I had to say that because I think it's so
No, say
important.
as much as you. I agree wholeheartedly. We're not going to change things until we start talking about it. We got to start talking about it, you know?
I have a question for you now. If someone is listening right now, they have been through abuse. It's now stopped, but they never told anyone about it. Is it over? Should they just continue to keep it a secret?
I mean, I guess it depends on the person. For me, it wouldn't be over. Personally, I can only speak for myself. But like, if that were my situation, no, I don't think so at all. Like, I would still be feeling all of the internal shame and all of the internal guilt. I mean, hey, listen, my abuser actually came to the hospital when I first got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. This is in the second book, Not My Circus. And he apologized to me about like a deep, heartfelt, sincere apology.
Oh, okay.
Knowing that he probably had something to do with the fact that I had Crohn's disease and the stress levels that he caused me. And I remained friends with him because he was like a father figure to me. It was a very strange dichotomy to love your abuser in that way, you know? But I think that had I not had those conversations, I wouldn't have been able to heal as much. And I've also done plant medicine, which is going to be talked about in the third book, where my brother was in the room with me, but I've done plant medicine where he said he felt like the cops were going to come and it sounded like there was a triple homicide going on in there. He had never heard the guttural screams coming out of me like he had heard before. And when I came out of it, I didn't have a voice. And I said, I don't know why I'm hoarse. And they both started laughing and then when I started thinking about it days later, I realized that like, I think, and this might be really weird, but I think I went to the underworld where all of my molesters are already dead. And I just like unleashed my rage on them, like in a major way. And it was like, you know, my brother, my main molester, and my uncle. And I just unleashed on them. And I think that's it. It just this. Even after all the work I did, and after all the therapy I've done, I still had this like incredible rage in me from what had happened to me and the fact that I had been violated on such a major level, you know?
And do you feel like there was a difference after that?
I feel like I had less rage, I guess, towards it.
It was more about getting that rage out.
Like I let them know how I felt about what they did to me and that it was not cool and that, you know, basically they could all go F themselves. And I just, you know, I really just let them have it. And it felt great to be able to do that.
And that release is important. And everybody doesn't need to release in the same way.
No.
But that release is important because you just answered that. The question I asked was, if something is, you know, something happened a long time ago, it's in the past, should we confront them or does it still affect us? And the answer is absolutely still affects us. And I will add to that 100% of the time it still affects you until
Yeah.
you deal with it. I always say if you don't deal with the issue will deal with you. And until you deal with the issue is already dealing with you. It's already affecting your life. It's already affecting your relationship. It's even affecting your job because it's affecting how you think. And until you deal with it, whether or not you need to confront and how you confront, that's going to be different. And again, I'm talking to the audience with this piece. It's going to be different for each one of us. I agree with Delicia in that each one of you, the answer is going to be slightly different, but burying it because it happened a long time ago. So it's over. It's not over until you confront it. 100% of the time. It is not over until you confront it in one way or another. If you can't confront them, you might need to write it out. You might need to go throw an axe, go to one of those, what do you call those anger management things where you just destroy things until you get it out.
Oh,
You need
it's
to
a
do
break room.
Yes, that's what they're called.
I've done them before.
And it's okay to do something like that, but we all need to do something like that because those secrets that you're holding on to, they're doing more damage than you realize because that damage is internal. Just because you're smiling on the outside, you might have money, you might have fame, you might have status, you might be okay on the outside, or so it seems. It's affecting you on the inside because it's still eating you. And that's so important. So
I did that for a long time. Fake it till you make it.
You can, but once we actually face that demon in the face, that's when we can begin to climb over what we've been under.
That's right. That's
and
when
it
the
sounds like
real
that's what
healing
happened for you.
begins.
I'm sorry, say it
That's
again.
when the real healing begins.
Exactly. And that sounds like that's what happened for you. So you've referred to your book a couple of times. So tell us what it is that you do and how can people find you?
So I have written a memoir trilogy series called Resilient AF. And the first book is called Kissing Asphalt. It's out and available on all different formats, including audiobook. And you can find it everywhere on Apple Books, whatnot. The next book is called Not My Circus. And the audiobook will be coming out soon, but it's available on all other formats right now, but probably in a couple months, the audiobook will be available. And then the third book, which is the last and final book in the series, is called The Queen of Silver Linings. And I hope that will be out on my birthday in March of next year. And you can find me at delicianiami.com, which is DELICIANIAMI.com, or Delicia Niami author on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm as many places and on TikTok too. So
all of that is on her website, DeliciaNiami.com, which will be in the podcast description or show notes. And there's so much more I wanted to really kind of talk about in this podcast, but we want to keep it to a reasonable attention span. So we're ending it here, but I hope that all of you you only heard a teeny tiny piece of her story. Actually, there's a lot more. So I do recommend that you take a look at her books. There's a lot more details in there and a lot more. I would say you want to sit down while you're reading it. She's got a lot more to say. And she's very passionate about helping others through their trauma.
I have to say one more time that the trigger warnings are real because they have triggered people, which I think in a good way. So, I mean, one guy told me who apparently had a way worse life than me. He had been locked in a basement and abused and all this stuff. And he goes, and I never mentioned therapy once in my first book. And he only read my first book and he goes, and he's older than I am. And he goes, I never thought about therapy until I read your book.
Wow. Wow. That just shows how effective it can be. And I love that. I love that. I do recommend that all of you read her books. You do. She's very, as you can see, unfiltered and you need to take it in doses, but I think it can be powerful. Just learning her story and what she's gone through. And even if you haven't been abused in the way that she has, I still think there's something to learn from her story. So thank you again, Delicia, for coming on, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And now for a mind-shifting moment. I want to plant this thought seed in your head today. What secrets are you holding? And then I want you to answer the next question. Are they doing damage? I promise you, if you really examine the answer to that, it is always yes. What kind of damage it's doing and to whom? That's going to be different for each of us. But secrets are damaging when we're holding back the things that we need to be talking about so we can deal with. And although they may be painful, although they may be uncomfortable, the freedom and release that comes after they come out outweighs all of that. Just think about that. Thank you for listening to Mindshift Power Podcast. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at The Mindshifter. If you have any comments, topic suggestions, or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit fatimabay.com/podcast. Remember, there's power in shifting your thinking. Tune in for next week.